Thank you, everyone. My name is Lisa D'Ambrosio. I'm at the University of Ottawa. Just for context, our course structure is a third-year undergraduate lab course. This is a mandatory course for all students enrolled in our program. We have about 80 students or so enrolled in this course each year. The course runs from September all the way through to April. So we have a distinct fall term and winter term, and there's a specific structure to the fall and winter term. So for example, in the fall term, all of our students participate in the discovery-based teaching lab, whereby we use the HHMI CPhages model. And then in the winter term, all students participate in an authentic research placement, whereby each student conducts their own independent research project under the supervision of one of our many faculty members at our various research institutes. And so with that, we have a variety of assessments that we use for this course. I've just presented them here on the screen. I'm sure many of these are familiar to you who are doing bio-related labs. But for today's talk, I'm really just going to focus on one of these assessments, which is the experiment benchmarks. And we use these experiment benchmarks specifically in the fall term with our CPhages Discovery Lab model. So these benchmarks, essentially in the fall term, students are required to isolate and characterize their own novel bacteriophage. So we have a series of benchmarks that I've listed in this table here that essentially help to guide students through the progression of their project. And the key thing about these benchmarks is that for the majority of them, the deadline for completion is the end of the semester. So this offers students a lot of flexibility to work at their own pace, to troubleshoot, to optimize protocols, to repeat protocols, and to even try things that they might not have otherwise thought of before. And so the goal here, the idea is to hopefully help students gain confidence in the lab, to gain self-efficacy in the lab, and really just to get a better awareness as to how authentic research is conducted. Now, with the flexibility, on the other side of that comes how do we manage uncertainty of research outcomes? So we have a variety of strategies we've been working towards to try to manage those uncertainties. For example, we have a variety of supervised drop-in lab sessions. For example, we have several weekends over the course of the semester where students are welcome to drop in if they'd like to work on their project. Students are welcome to drop in during certain supervised times during reading week or at the end of the semester, if that works best for their schedules. We also have peer sharing of resources. This was briefly mentioned before the break, whereby, some students, for example, they're really trying in the lab. They're really trying to isolate that phage. And there's documented, evidence that we've seen the students really trying their best and working hard at that. Students can share the resources in terms of, just sharing phages that they've isolated so the student can progress with their benchmarks. The other thing we've done is our instructors have optimized protocols for common roadblocks that have been a stumbling block as we've seen over the years. And tech and instructor-generated backup resources so that there's a constant supply of reagents and tools if the students need them. Another thing we tried to implement is our lab notebook assessment. Part of this assessment, we include a next steps planning section whereby students are required to articulate what do they plan to do the next time they come to the lab. So this helps to keep them focused, helps keep the progression of their project moving forward. And so that helps to enhance the probability they will meet these benchmarks. In addition to these tips, we've also incorporated several other strategies to help keep motivation, momentum in the lab high throughout the semester, so that in turn students are able to meet those benchmarks. So for example, we have weekly tutorial sessions. We also have a lab performance assessment whereby the instructor and or the TAs can offer students feedback on their work in the lab so they can progress. Also, an incentive to help keep motivation high in the lab through the semester is we have a series of figure assignments. So rather than traditional lab reports, we have a series of figure assignments whereby students are required to gather some of the data they've been collecting, positive, negative data, or whatever they have, and put it together into a figure and corresponding caption And so I provide tailored video feedback for each student to help enhance their science communication skills. And again, it helps keep the progression of their project moving forward. And the other benefit with these figure assignments is at the end of the semester, students do oral poster presentations, so they can take the figures they've generated and use them in their posters. And we have evaluators from across several different departments at our faculty who serve as evaluators for these presentations. So this helps to keep, again, student motivation high throughout the semester, helps to enhance students' probability of meeting those benchmarks. And it also just strengthens their science communication and an awareness overall as to how authentic research is conducted. So with that, I'd just like to thank everyone who's part of this lab course. I've listed their names here. Especially like to thank Adam Rudner, who coordinates the CPhages component of the course, and Keith Wheaton, who coordinates the winter term of the course. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you for that talk. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. D'Ambrosio? Okay, great. What proportion of the total grade is assigned to the benchmarks portion?
Yeah, it's about 15%.
All right, does anyone have any other questions? We have time for maybe like one or two more.
I'm curious, are there, of the other assessments that you said you have in the class, are there any generally that you find work very well in terms of like student engagement with them and assessing like kind of how you feel the students are actually doing in lab?
Yeah, so I would say, in addition to the benchmarks, I would say those figure assignments are key because I try, because when you're dealing with generating figures, I started providing feedback, written feedback as one would do normally with an assignment. And this is really hard to provide feedback on a figure. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna just try recording little snippets for each student. And the students loved it. They loved the engagement. They really felt that because it was tailored for them, and they really have offered positive feedback in terms of learning how to communicate science and in a more, producing quality figures. And also it helped them move forward with their future assignments, not only for this course, but also when they move on to their fourth year and they do their honors project and beyond.
Great, thank you. So any other final questions for Dr. D'Ambrosio?
Hi, quick question.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you provide them with examples of figures? Because some of them may not even understand why you need a figure. And also, what's your rubric? How do you do you assess put a grade to it in your grade book? Just curious.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yes, there's a rubric. It's a broad rubric or a general rubric because we don't want a one size fits all model for every single student. So there's a format assessment and then a content assessment. I provide a tutorial on some tips on how to generate effective figures. And we do provide some examples. We go through examples from the literature and also a few examples of what is an example of a really great figure? What are some kind of examples of what not to do or things to avoid? So we do provide them with support on that. Yes.